Hello, I'm John Farquharson, and I'm filling in for Jack Etkin on segment 3 of the show. And our guest for this segment is Bernard von Schulmann of Amalgamation Yes. So welcome, Bernard. Thanks for coming in today. Appreciate your time.
Thank you for inviting me.
Just to get us started, could you just tell us a bit about Amalgamation Yes, and in particular its goal of a 2014 referendum?
For a number of years now, there's been various groups of people who've been interested in the issue of municipal amalgamation in this region. And finally, beginning of 2013, all of us different groups of people came together and we decided it made much more sense putting together one group with one aim. And out of that has come Amalgamation Yes. And our goal is that for the 2014 municipal elections, every municipality in this region ask the question of its citizens, are you in favor of investigating amalgamation with one or more municipalities in this region, yes or no?
So how do you get it onto, do you have to go plead to each of the municipalities to get it onto their ballot, or?
Realistically, we will have to go to each of the municipalities. We'll have to get the municipalities to agree to put it on the ballot. Theoretically, if the provincial government wanted to, it could force some form of ballot measure, though it's questionable exactly what they could do or not do, and I'm not sure that that would be a positive way to move forward. But our goal right now, and our hope is that we will get buy-in from enough municipalities that the other ones who aren't interested or aren't willing will put it on the ballot at the end, because they are concerned that they're out of step with what public opinion is.
Okay, so it'd be up to the council to give a thumbs up or a thumbs down.
Yes, and at this point, Colwood has said they're willing to do it, but so far only Colwood.
Only Colwood. Okay.
But we still got a while.
Yeah, and then that would there's some sort of study involved.
Well, once the referendum were happen in 2014, the municipalities involved would then be able to go to the provincial government and say we have a clear mandate from our citizens to investigate amalgamation. We would like to start the process of a study to find out what sort of amalgamation would be a good idea, what sort of amalgamation could work for us, and the provincial government would then provide funding to do this work. The outcome of that work then would be a formal referendum to create some new municipality, either an amalgamation of one or two municipalities or amalgamation of a number of municipalities. Much of that depends on what the study comes out with, but that formal vote after the study would be what creates a new amalgamated municipality or municipalities.
Okay, the study is kind of interesting because it's going to have such an influence on what follows. Who sets the terms of reference for the study?
The terms of reference are created by, in conjunction between the municipalities involved. Interest groups can give their input,
okay.
But there are civil servants with the local government restructuring branch that are used to doing this and have done this a number of times. So they have different templates that already exist that have been used in different areas, such as in Trail, where Trail and Warfield are going down the path of amalgamation right now.
Okay. So, I mean, your mission statement talks about working towards more effective and accountable governance. So right now, what are some of the more outstanding, obvious symptoms of a deficiency in terms of effectiveness or on accountability?
Well, my main interest in the amalgamation issue is that because of the lack of amalgamation, we have very poor planning across the region. We have some 20 plus official community plans that are all written as if there's no neighbors. So Oak Bay writes an official community plan as if Saanich and Victoria don't exist. Victoria does the same. I happen to live, like about 20% of the people in this region, on the border between one municipality and another one, within a couple hundred meters of it. I have two OCPs for my neighborhood because I have two municipalities. They are not designed to mesh together at all. We also have the problem, and this is the one that really bothers me a lot as well, is a natural area to govern is one that reflects all aspects of somebody's life. It's where you live, it's where you shop, it's where you work, it's where you play. And our problem in this region is our municipalities generally only reflect where people sleep at night. Very few people in this region actually shop and work and sleep and play in the same municipality. Many people do it in 4 different ones, but only get a say in the one where they own their house.
Right. I went to one of the Amalgamation Yeses amalgamation, yes, one of their initial open houses. And I remember so distinctly one chap standing up and saying along the lines of, unless you can prove to me that things will definitely be better after amalgamation, then count me out. And his line was, if there ain't a problem, don't fix it. So how do you respond to that?
Well,
how would you guarantee that things are going to be better afterwards?
as a starting point, let's look at emergency planning for this region. We have 13 municipalities that only have limited or no coordination if it comes to an emergency. When we get a large earthquake in this region, there is nothing within the plans to show that View Royal and Esquimalt and Colwood are going to cooperate together to deal with the disaster, or Victoria, or Sandwich, or Oak Bay. Only the 3 peninsula municipalities have any even agreement to try and work together. So if we have a major earthquake, like a scale of what happened in Christchurch in New Zealand, a city of almost the same size, we are going to have more people die because we are not going to have fire and ambulance and police that are going to be able to respond, because we're not going to have a central way to get them out. We're going to have 13 municipalities trying to do 13 things in emergency with 13 emergency headquarters. In Christchurch, in New Zealand, they said their single biggest problem there was, even though they're a single government, is that the police and the fire and the ambulance weren't closely coordinated enough. Now you imagine if the fire and the police across the region don't coordinate at all in the case of an emergency, what's going to happen? It's going to be a nightmare. That alone, I think, is more than enough of a benefit of why amalgamation is better. Another area is we have so many different zoning bylaws in this region. Every municipality has a separate one, and they do not emulate each other one. It is almost impossible for an average person to know what the zoning from one neighborhood to another neighborhood means, because they have to dig through insane amounts of zoning bylaws. It is a bureaucratic nightmare that makes it virtually impossible for somebody trying to just do some basic work on their house and extensions to know that they're doing it right, because they can't be certain and easily finding what they need. And then you look at our planning. I mean, why do we have weird things like Dean Park, the neighborhood, suddenly next to a whole bunch of farms? It's because one municipality completely ignored the neighbor one when they were planning it. North Sandwich said, sure, we're going to stick a whole bunch of residential houses next to farms. You look at Mayfair and Tillicum, both were designed through the planning by Victoria to get it as far outside of the city of Victoria and as close to Sandwich, who wouldn't take them where they wanted to be. Our planning across this region is abysmal, and it would be a dramatic improvement if we had one general OCP and one set of zoning bylaws of the region. Those two, that emergency planning, those alone would be dramatic improvements in our lives.
They would, for sure. But why can't we just address those two issues, like emergency planning and some of the bylaws that govern development outside of amalgamation?
Can you imagine Sandwich and Victoria agreeing that the fire chief from View Royal would be in charge of all the police and fire departments in case of an emergency? View Royal is home to our primary emergency facility in this region, the VG8 hospital. That's the one thing we have to make sure stands and is accessible. So why not give View Royal the control over all emergency services in case of a major earthquake? Can you imagine Sandwich agreeing to that? I mean, Sandwich isn't going to agree. Victoria isn't agree. Nobody's going to agree. They're never going to agree to it. And there's another issue of a liability issue. Mm-hmm. If Sandwich's fire department is under the control of a different municipality and there's a problem in Sandwich, can Sandwich then get sued by its residents for not responding? I don't think they can even do it in a legal way that they'll be able to go forward with it. And as to the zoning bylaws, I don't understand why they don't try and emulate each other, but they all seem to want to reinvent it. But the OCP process, nobody ever wants to communicate with their neighbors.
So are these the issues that would be reflected in the various templates that the experts in that you referenced earlier in terms of who would be in charge of setting the terms of reference? Are these the sorts of issues that they would sort of work into their templates?
It's part of what would be within it. A lot of what would also be within it would be issues of taxation and costs, because those are the things that people often immediately gravitate to when it comes to amalgamation. Is it going to be cheaper for me, or my taxes going to be lower? And that's all people seem to be able to think about. And a lot of the studies end up focusing a lot on those issues because it's what people push as the primary issue. But the studies do indicate then improvements of governance by being able to unify planning, unify emergency preparedness, and those things.
maybe you're not allowed to say, but again, going back to one of the initial open houses that you had, there was another chap who stood up and said, I can't believe that if you asked a body of experts what the ideal number of municipalities would be for our population of 335,000 people, that they'd come up with 13. So do you in your own head have an ideal number? Like Mayor John Rands of the Chosen?
Yeah.
Yeah. He proposed a model of 6. Do you have a model in the back of your head?
I am not tied to any specific model. I mean, I would be happy just if Victoria and Sandwich amalgamated. I just want a reduction in the number of municipalities. I mean, I think probably, in my personal opinion, one of the best models would be something that reflects something similar to the current boundaries of the school districts. So that, the Sandwich School District seems to make a reasonable amount of sense. The Sewage School District, maybe Sewage still makes more sense staying on its own. But the Greater Victoria School District seems to be a fairly close reflection to where people live, shop, work, and play within that area. Those 225,000 people seem to be a very clear, cohesive unit, and I think that alone is a very good idea. If it goes beyond that, great. If it's other ones, it's hard to know.
One of the underlying assumptions of amalgamation, yes, is that we believe that fewer municipal governments will better position the region to face current and future challenges. And you've talked about some of the current challenges and some of the future challenges. But talk to me about how fewer municipal governments would better position the region to exploit current and future opportunities. I refer to this as sort of like the synergy thing, okay? So Bernard, inspire me, okay? Tell me how amalgamation will enable the region's 335,000 people to fully realize their potential as a municipal collective.
Who right now would you say is the mayor that is the voice for this region?
Oh,
Who is it?
Don't have one.
There isn't one. We don't have a mayor who can speak up for the issues of this region, which means that when we talk about provincial level issues, Victoria, nobody speaks for it. When we talk federal level municipal issues, nobody speaks for it. We end up with a bunch of people sort of speaking for bits and pieces of it, and nobody speaks for the whole. The lack of anybody speaking for the whole is not doing us any favors. We are not getting the sort of recognition and support that one would get if one were to look at Regina or Winnipeg or Edmonton. I mean, all of them are in the same ballpark of our size, but they're unitary governments, and their mayors strongly speak for those communities and can make the issues of those communities matter to the national media, whereas we don't have anybody here who can do that. And that, I think that we get a synergy from.
Yeah, but if you said if it was just Victoria and Sandwich, then we'd just have the synergy along between Victoria and Sandwich. And you would hope that it would spread?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, any reduction in number of municipalities, I think, would be an improvement. I mean, I worry that we are headed towards from Jordan River and Shirley becoming a municipality, and that we'll go from 13 to 14.
Yes, I picked up on the information on the website that really caught my eye was along the lines of what you were just referring to. In terms of, if we all came together, we'd be the 15th largest city in Canada, and that very much speaks to a holistic amalgamation of all 13 municipalities. So a favorite topic of mine right now is sewage treatment. Okay, so how would the current sewage treatment project be different under amalgamation?
First of all, the people dealing with it, if we had, for argument's sake, a single unified body that dealt with the area where sewage was here, which is more or less the Greater Victoria School District with a bit of the West Shore, you would have elected officials having to answer to it, as opposed to right now, the decisions are being made by the CRD, who are people who are not elected by the public to make these decisions. They're chosen by their councils to be there to represent the interests of their councils. I think it would make a difference to how the council would react if the council had to deal with it directly, and if they had to worry about the implications of their decisions at election time. I don't think any of the people who are sitting on the CRD board worry about what's going to happen to them at election time because of the sewage treatment plant.
they may be surprised, but we shall see. So what would happen to the CRD under, let's say, it would disappear under a full amalgamation, but what would happen to the CRD under an amalgamation of, let's say, choosing maybe your model of 2 and, let's say, John Rand's model of 6? What would happen in those 2 scenarios to the CRD?
Much depends on what the local governments want to do with it. There is no need to give the regional district as many responsibility as it has right now. There is no need for the CRD to have a parks department. We have no end of municipalities that can do parks. If you had a single municipality controlling the water and the sewage, there's no need to have the CRD create a board to do it. As soon as you no longer have to deal with it outside of one municipality, the responsibility the CRD has for it can be removed. Regional districts do not necessarily have to do a lot, and their influence can be dramatically reduced if it's not necessary.
So it would be a slow whittling away depending on the rate or extent of which municipalities were amalgamated.
Possibly.
Yeah. What about the often cited, not so much the often cited, but the increasingly cited example of the Greater Toronto Area's Mayor Ford as being a product of amalgamation?
I fail to see how amalgamation can be blamed for how the people of Toronto vote. Mm-hmm. Are you saying that Rob Ford could not have been elected in one of the previous municipalities if it had existed? I can't quite see how they make that leap. So I don't quite understand how that comes, how people get to that.
Yeah. Another concern that people express is that right now they feel they have, much more of a voice and a direct access to their, smaller municipal representatives. And the concern there seems to be that, size enables a fair degree of direct accountability and having your voice heard. Wouldn't that diminish with?
Not at all. I don't agree that I don't think we have as good access as we would if we had an amalgamated municipality. Right now, one of the ways that people get access to their municipality is not direct one-on-one sitting down for a coffee with a councillor. Very few people will do that currently or in the future. The way that people interact is what they read in the media, what they hear in the media. Because we have 13 municipalities, we get limited coverage of Victoria, limited coverage of Saanich, and the rest get ignored, and they can do stupid things and nobody knows because nobody ever hears about it and it never gets covered.
Okay. Bernard, thank you so much for coming on. That concludes our segment with Bernard von Schulmann of Amalgamation Yes.